I'm going to talk about the spoiler leaks and what they say for episode 6 of Game of Thrones. I'm going to talk about how they've been spot on so far and just tremendously spot on for episode 5, which I think was, my favorite episode of the season. And I'm going to analyze that episode, but I'm also going to talk about the spoiler leaks for episode 6. So if you don't want to hear any spoilers for episode 6, the finale of Game of Thrones, or any earlier episodes of Game of Thrones, then go away. But if you want to stay, I'd love it if you'd hit the subscribe button so you can hear more of our Game of Thrones videos. And I'll link to one of our previous videos talking about the spoilers in more detail. So, like I said, everything from episode 5, the bells, the Battle of King's Landing, was correct in the spoilers. They predicted Euron's fleet burning. They predicted the battle with Jaime and Euron, with Euron dying, but Jaime mortally wounded, at least according to Euron. They correctly predicted the death of Cersei and Jaime together being crushed in King's Landing. Predicted the Clegane Bowl being in a draw with them both dying. They predicted the battle not being very competitive, that it was a rout by Dany and the Northern forces, and they talked about how the spear was thrown by Grey Worm into the Lannister forces who surrendered, and Dany's forces just kind of all going crazy, including some of the Northern forces, not just the Dothraki and Unsullied. And so, but who went crazy the most was Dany, and so I'm one of those people who would say that up until this episode, we had not seen any of the Mad Queen stuff that everybody was talking about, all her advisors were talking about, that we had not observed it. And, Dan and Dave made this really weak argument where they show the death of Viserys, her brother, at the hand of her husband, Khal Drogo. And, I think that's pretty weak. Number one, that was a long time ago. Dany was not the ruler. She was not in charge. She was totally at the mercy of Khal Drogo, as was Jorah Mormont at that time. And her brother had totally violated their religious and cultural practices by bringing a weapon into the Vaes Dothrak. And then he also had shamed Khal in front of his lieutenants, and really probably Khal didn't have a choice in that situation, and that he would have lost his respect of his lieutenants had he not put Viserys in his place. Unfortunately, that led to his death, and so they kind of tried to hint that, her reaction to that hinted at her becoming the Mad Queen, 7 seasons later in a totally different situation. Now, I think they did okay transition in terms of, she was grieving, and I thought Emilia Clarke was very convincing, especially when the bells rang, right? The bells rang, and then she wanted to go more. Okay, but, I guess my take is that, okay, just from a self-interested point of view, right? Of course, this is rational, and, if you have someone who's mad, they can do anything. But just from the pure self-interest, you don't want to burn the biggest source of tax revenues, your richest and largest city, because you're going to have few subjects to rule and less taxes to have, and you'll just be less powerful if you burn your house down. And that's what she was doing. She was burning her house down. It was the house that the Targaryens had built. And why she burned it down with all the people in it, we'll never know. But we think maybe she was mad. But the leaks were totally right that she did become the Mad Queen. And the leaks say for episode 6 that the Mad Queen must die. And everybody that looks at that episode was going to agree now that given that Dany, tried to kill 1 million people and probably killed half of them or more that for no reason, and destroyed a city for no reason, a very large city. So if you want to put like the heinousness of her acts in like our historical context, there's only one nation that has used the atom bomb in war, and that is the United States. At the end of World War II, they dropped atom bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, wiping out those entire cities which had mostly civilian targets in them. Nevertheless, there was not a surrender at that time, so Japan had not surrendered, so they were not dropped after the surrender, which Dany dropped the atom bomb of Drogon after the surrender, and she also dropped the atom bomb of Drogon and deployed it on the largest city, her own city. There was no, for instance, there was no chance of the Americans taking over Japan and ruling Japan forever, and they never really tried to do that. They did occupy Japan, but it wasn't like there was any chance of that. Whereas Dany really wanted to rule the Seven Kingdoms and Westeros, and she just decided to destroy it instead. Okay, so she's a war criminal. She's a mass murderer. She's a bad woman, and obviously Arya and Jon have something to say about that. I thought it was really cool having the perspective of Arya through the rubble and through the chaos. I also liked the fact that she got on that white horse. She rode the pale mare, she rode the pale horse, hearkening to revelations in the Bible. So I thought that was kind of cool, since she is our death personified. Her riding out on the pale horse seemed pretty cool to me, but maybe not everybody felt that way. So, people didn't start believing these leaks until episode 3 a little bit, but even then they were not that substantial, talking about a minor character, Lyanna Mormont, becoming a white, or talking about Rhaegal breathing blue fire even though it was through his neck. That didn't seem that interesting. People started paying attention after they predicted these really crazy things, that Rhaegal was shot down by Euron. Nobody would have predicted that. And Missandei was beheaded by the Mountain, which seemed kind of a random thing. But it happened in episode 4. So it was... They still were pretty spotty. They also predicted exactly how the chain of the information about Jon's heritage as Aegon Targaryen went through Sansa to Tyrion to Varys, and they also predicted that Varys would be executed in this episode. And we all, after watching episode 4, I think most people thought Varys was going to get it. Right? Varys had a lot of warnings from Dany about the whole betrayal thing. He said to Dany to her face that he didn't agree with her, and Tyrion ratted him out before Jon ratted him out. So Jon was going to rat out Varys if Tyrion didn't, so Tyrion got in there first before he lost his head too. But Tyrion got his final warning, and so it seems obvious, which is what the episode 6 leak is, that Tyrion's going to go on trial for that he freed Jaime, and that was, one too many crossings of Dany, especially in Mad Queen mode. He did get his stated objectives, although I'll have to rewatch the episode. I did not see Jaime having anything to do with that, but maybe he did, that the bells rang and the Lannisters gave up. But the bells did ring, and Dany thought that was a go bell to just torch the city. So, what does the leaks say for episode 6? They say that Jon kills Dany. That Jon, kind of stabs her in the back. So we're in full Lightbringer Azor Ahai mode. So they, in terms of prophecy, especially book prophecy, Azor Ahai has not really been mentioned much except for the prince that was promised, and Lightbringer was mentioned. So the Azor Ahai prophecy says that the Lightbringer is going to be forged by stabbing the sword in his lover's heart. So Azor Ahai is the prince's promised, and Lightbringer will be that sword that stabs the lover's heart, and the lover is named Nissa Nissa. Obviously here Dany is Nissa Nissa, and Jon is Azor Ahai. So we were worried that maybe Arya was Azor Ahai. I don't think that's the case. We've decided that the big bad is Dany, that she's worse than the Night King, more dangerous than the Night King, especially since the Night King is dead. So she's the big bad, bigger than Cersei, bigger than the Night King, and Jon is going to save the world. The leaks say that Jon is not going to take the throne after that. He's been pretty clear on that in all the episodes, that he doesn't want to take the throne. And after he does this act of treachery, he probably won't want to take it either. They say either he dies or he goes to the Night's Watch. You know, I don't know. Maybe. So it seems like they, because of the endings, who ends up ruling the Seven Kingdoms is so sketchy in these things. They all have these right details for episodes 3, 4, and 5, but then they have these different endings. So in some endings, Tyrion dies. Tyrion is executed after a trial. In some endings, he makes it to the end in this final council that elects Bran. It has Bronn and Samwell on it. You know, a lot of people don't think Bronn would make it, but, you know, who else is there? And, you know, if Tyrion is alive, I think he will hand Highgarden to him, because who else is going to take Highgarden? Everybody's dead. So that's the lesson of this series. If you survive, you'll get a lot of land, because there's nobody there else to take it. So that's the end of Game of Thrones, probably. Another possibility, maybe Sansa's the queen. Another possibility, I don't know. You know, it seems there's kind of maybe a talk about Tyrion and Sansa ruling, but Sansa executes Tyrion. It's really hard to say. You know, I think in terms of the Maggie the Frog prophecy, I think that's been fulfilled. The younger, more beautiful queen, Dany, has taken over her rule, right? And that was the end of her. It doesn't have to have Sansa at the ultimate end, because we've got to the end of Cersei. But I think the wheel is broken, and all this stuff about she's going to end tyrants, she ends tyrants by, you know, destroying everything and making it necessary that she's also killed. And so, you know, what would be a big twist? It would be a big twist based on the predictions, which are all very consistent. The leaks are very consistent that Jon kills Dany, not Arya. So there's some leaks that talk about him seeing Arya, so we think there might be some sort of faceless man action with Arya going after Dany. If Jon doesn't do it, she will do it. But, you know, Jon's the adopted son of Ned Stark, and so he who does the sentence must swing the sword, and that's also seems like Arya doesn't deserve the two biggest kills of the season. She just gets the one with the Night King. That seems like the way that they would do it. So I don't think that at this point, I don't think you need many leaks to see where the season is going, and the end of Game of Thrones, the finale for the series. Thanks for listening and watching. Subscribe and come back and watch some more videos. Talk to you later. Bye.